My parents spent my college fund on sister's rehab. 5th time in rehab, by the way. I found out when I got acceptance letter and asked about the fund. Mom cried and said your sister needed it more. I was 18. Had $47,000 saved since I was born. Gone. Just gone. I didn't even argue. The envelope from Northwestern came on a Tuesday afternoon in March. Heavy cream paper purple print. The kind of weight that meant something important. I held it against the kitchen light before opening it, savoring what I knew was inside. My fingers trembled as I slid them under the seal. Congratulations, it read. Full acceptance journalism program. Everything I'd worked towards since freshman year, when Mrs. Patterson told me I had a gift for storytelling. Mom was folding laundry in the living room when I walked in, and I couldn't keep the smile off my face. I got in, I said, holding up the letter like a trophy. Northwestern accepted me. She looked up for matching socks, and her expression shifted through several emotions I couldn't quite identify. Pride, maybe then something darker. That's wonderful, sweetie. Really wonderful. So I guess we need to talk about accessing the college fund. I continued sitting down on the arm of the couch. Financial aid won't cover everything, but with a fund I should be able to handle tuition and housing without taking on massive loans. The silence stretched too long. Mom's hand stilled on a pair of Dad's work socks. Muriel. She started, then stopped. Started again. There's something your father and I need to discuss with you. Cold dread pulled in my stomach. What do you mean? The fund. We had to use it. I laughed because surely I'd misheard. Use what? Your college fund. Her voice cracked. It's gone. The words didn't make sense. They were sounds without meaning, like a foreign language I'd never studied. Gone, I repeated flatly. Your sister needed help. Real help this time. The facility in Arizona, it's the best in the country for what she's dealing with, and insurance wouldn't cover the full cost. Mom's eyes were already wet tears tracking down her cheeks. We didn't have a choice. Rehab? My voice sounded strange to my own ears. You spent my college fund on Vanessa's rehab. It's her 5th time. Yes, but this place is different. They have a 90-day program with family therapy and aftercare and $47,000. I cut her off. The number sat heavy on my tongue. That's how much was in there. Grandma started it when I was born. You and Dad added to it every birthday, every Christmas. You said it was my future. Mom reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Your sister needed it more. She could have died, Muriel. Do you understand that? Died! I stood up their acceptance letter, crumpling slightly in my grip. Where's Dad? At work. But honey, please. When did you spend it? The question came out clinical, detached. I felt like I was floating somewhere near the ceiling watching this happen to someone else. Over the past 8 months. The first installment was in July, and then, you've known since summer. I processed this slowly. You watched me apply to colleges, helped me write my essays, drove me to campus visits, all while knowing there was no money. We thought maybe you'd get a full scholarship, or what, Mom? My voice rose despite my best efforts to stay calm. Or I'd just magically not need to go to college. Did you think I'd just forget about the fund you've been talking about my entire life? She was sobbing now, full, gasping breaths. We'll figure something out. Student loans, community college for 2 years first. Maybe you could take a gap year and work. Vanessa has been to rehab 4 times before this. I finally looked at her directly. 4 times. And every single time she got out and went right back to using. But this time is different, right? This time the $47,000 will fix everything. That's not fair. You're right, it's not. I walked toward the stairs, then paused. Does she even know? Did you tell Vanessa that her little sister's future paid for her 5th chance? Mom didn't answer, which was answer enough. I went to my room and closed the door with careful precision. No slamming, no dramatics. I sat on my bed and stared at the Northwestern letter until the words blurred together. My phone buzzed. Text from Dad. Mom told me you found out. We need to talk when I get home. I didn't respond. Here's what people don't tell you about betrayal. It's not the hot anger you expect. It's cold and clear and strangely clarifying. I spent that night doing research instead of crying. Student loan calculators, cost of living estimates, work-study programs. By morning, I had a plan sketched out in my notebook, but it looked nothing like the future I'd imagined. Dad tried to talk to me over breakfast. We made an impossible choice, he said, coffee mug wrapped in both hands. Your sister was in crisis. What were we supposed to do? Let her hit rock bottom. She's hit rock bottom 5 times, I pointed out, pushing scrambled eggs around my plate. The bottom seems to have a basement and a sub-basement and probably a whole underground parking structure. Don't be cruel. I'm not being cruel. I'm being accurate. I met his eyes. Did you ever plan to tell me, or were you hoping I'd figure out student loans on my own? He looked away first. We were going to talk to you before decision letters came. We didn't know how. Here's how I said. Muriel, we spent your college fund on your sister's addiction, the money your grandmother set aside because she grew up poor and wanted better for her grandchildren. The money we promised was yours. It's gone. That's how your grandmother would have understood. Mom interjected from the doorway. Family takes care of family. Something snapped. Then why didn't Vanessa's addiction take care of itself after $47,000? The kitchen went silent except for the drip of the coffee maker. I pushed back from the table. I'm going to school. Nobody tried to stop me. Senior year limped toward graduation. I accepted Northwestern's offer because withdrawing felt like admitting defeat. I'd figure out the money somehow. Had to. My friends talked about dorm assignments and class schedules while I filled out loan applications during lunch period. Vanessa called from Arizona 2 weeks later. Mom told me about the college fund, she said, her voice small and sober. I'm so sorry, Muriel. Muriel. She hadn't called me that since we were kids, before the pills and the drinking and the complete demolition of our family's finances and sanity. Are you actually sorry, I asked? Or are you sorry because Mom told you that you should call and apologize? The question came out harsher than I intended, but I didn't take it back. Both, probably. At least she was honest. This program is really good, though. I'm learning about my triggers and working through trauma. And I don't want to hear about your trauma right now, Vanessa. I sat down on my bedroom floor phone pressed to my ear. I've spent 18 years watching you destroy yourself and everyone around you. I've lied to my friends about why you couldn't come to my school events. I pretended not to hear Mom crying in the bathroom. I've listened to Dad make excuses to his family about why we can't afford vacations anymore. And now I get to explain to my college roommate why I'm working 3 jobs while she's pledging sororities. I didn't ask them to spend your money. You didn't have to ask. You just had to need it more than I did. I laughed, but it sounded broken. And apparently you always will. She was crying when we hung up. I felt nothing. Graduation came. I wore royal blue and sat between Marcus Chen and Jennifer Davidson alphabetically, neither of whom knew my parents had systematically dismantled my future. They talked about summer road trips and freshman orientation like these were guarantees instead of privileges. At the ceremony, I watched Mom take pictures with that forced smile people wear when they're pretending everything is fine. Dad clapped when I crossed the stage loudly enough that several people turned around. Vanessa wasn't there. She'd graduated from her 90-day program and moved into a sober living facility in Scottsdale. More money, of course. Another check from my parents' account. At least this one didn't come from my funds since there was nothing left to take. We're so proud of you, Mom said afterward, trying to hug me while I held my diploma. I let her because fighting in front of my grandparents seemed pointless. But I didn't hug back. Summer became a blur of work shifts. I picked up positions at 3 different places. Morning coffee shop, afternoon retail at the mall. Evenings waiting tables. Sleep happened in chunks between alarm clocks. My friends invited me to the beach, to concerts, to all the last hurrah celebrations before college scattered us across the country. I went to maybe a quarter of them, always leaving early for another shift. You're going to burn out before you even start college, my best friend Ashley warned over iced coffee in late July. She was headed to UC San Diego, her college fund intact and thriving. Can't burn out if you never stop moving, I replied, checking my phone for my next shift time. Your parents really can't help at all. I told Ashley an edited version. Unexpected expenses, tight finances, still figuring out loans. She didn't need to know about the rehab bills or my sister's newest attempt at sobriety. Some humiliations were too specific to share. They're tapped, I said, which was true enough. What I didn't mention, I'd stopped eating dinner at home, stopped participating in family movie nights. My bedroom became a private island in a house full of people I no longer recognized. Mom kept trying to bridge the gap with small gestures. My favorite snacks appearing on my desk gas money, left in envelopes marked, for Muriel. I spent the cash on textbooks and left the snacks untouched until they went stale. Dad caught me leaving for my restaurant shift one evening in early August. We need to talk about this distance between us, he said, blocking the doorway. I'm going to be late. Muriel, please. His voice cracked. We made the best decision we could with impossible circumstances. Someday when you have children, you'll understand. If I have children, I said I'll understand that I can't save one by sacrificing the other. I pushed past him gently. That's not love. That's triage. And I was the patient you decided could afford to bleed out. I heard him call after me, but I was already out the door. Northwestern orientation was supposed to be 3 days of campus tours and icebreakers. I had one day because I couldn't afford to miss more work shifts. I flew in on a budget airline at 6:00 a.m., attended the mandatory sessions, met my roommate for exactly 45 minutes, then caught a red-eye back home. Sarah, my roommate, seemed nice enough. Political science major from Connecticut, field hockey player, normal parents who apparently believed in keeping their financial promises. Your schedule is insane, she commented, looking at my work-study placement and part-time job spreadsheet. When are you going to sleep? Weekends, hopefully. I tried to make it sound like a joke. She didn't laugh. Classes started in late August. I'd managed to cobble together enough loans, grants, and savings to cover first semester tuition and part of housing. The rest sat on credit cards I'd opened specifically for this purpose. Interest rates be damned. My parents offered to help with books. I declined. The journalism program was everything I dreamed about and nothing I could fully enjoy. I sat in lectures on investigative reporting while calculating how many shifts I needed to cover rent. Participated in discussions about ethics and truth-telling while keeping the biggest truth of my life locked away. My family had chosen my sister's addiction over my education, and I'd let them, because what else could I do? Vanessa stayed sober through September. Then October. Mom sent updates via text that I mostly ignored. Your sister got a job at a coffee shop. She's really doing well this time. November brought the relapse. I found out through a voicemail from Dad, his voice shaking. Your sister had a slip. She's okay. She's safe, but she's going back to Arizona for a tune-up program. Just wanted you to know. A tune-up. Like she was a car with faulty timing instead of a person who'd blown through my entire future for her 5th attempt at recovery. I deleted the voicemail without calling back. Thanksgiving break arrived, and I told my parents I had to work through the holiday. This was partially true. I'd picked up double shifts at a Chicago restaurant that needed extra staff, but mainly I couldn't sit at a table and pretend to be grateful, while Vanessa's empty chair reminded everyone where the money had really gone. Ashley called me out the week after. You didn't go home. Had to work. You're allowed to be angry, you know. She'd gotten the full story one night when I was too exhausted to maintain the edited version. They screwed you over. They saved my sister's life. Allegedly. I stirred sugar into bad coffee from the student union. I'm just being selfish, wanting silly things like an education and a future. Stop! Ashley's voice went sharp. Stop doing that thing where you minimize what they did. They had 18 years to save for her recovery and 18 years to save for your college. Those weren't mutually exclusive goals until they made them mutually exclusive. She was right, but admitting it felt like opening a door I'd welded shut. Finals came. I pulled a 3.7 GPA while working 30 hours a week, which should have felt like a victory. Instead, it felt like proof I could survive anything, even if survival meant running on 4 hours of sleep and vending machine dinners. Christmas break forced the issue. I couldn't avoid going home without making it obvious I was avoiding going home. The house looked the same. Same wreath on the door, same lights along the gutters. Mom had made my favorite cookies snickerdoodles with extra cinnamon. You look thin, she said, immediately pulling me into a hug. I didn't return it. Freshman 15 went in reverse. I set my bag down and looked around. Where's Vanessa? Still in Arizona. She's doing really well in the aftercare program. 30 days sober this time. This time. Those two words contained entire universes of failure. Dinner was awkward in the way that only family dinners can be when everyone is performing normalcy. Dad asked about classes. I gave him the highlights, leaving out the parts about falling asleep in the library and living on ramen because I couldn't afford the meal plan. We're glad you're home, Mom said, passing me green beans I didn't want. The house feels empty without both our girls. One of your girls is building a life, I replied quietly. The other one is trying to stop destroying hers. Those aren't equivalent absences. The table went silent except for the scrape of forks on plates. Later that night, Dad knocked on my bedroom door. Can I come in? I shrugged, which he took as permission. He sat on my desk chair looking older than I remembered. Your mother and I made a decision that hurt you. We know that. But we'd make the same decision again if we had to, because Vanessa's life was at stake. My life was at stake too, I said, meeting his eyes. Maybe not as dramatically, but college was supposed to be my foundation. You and Mom promised me that foundation my entire childhood. You told me if I worked hard and got good grades, the money would be there. I did everything right, Dad, everything. And it didn't matter, he said quietly, because Vanessa's addiction was always going to be more important than my achievements. That's not. Yes, it is. I cut him off. You can dress it up however you want, but the math is simple. Vanessa's 5th chance at recovery was worth more than my first chance at the future we planned together. And now I'm drowning in debt before I'm even 19. Working myself to exhaustion, watching other kids enjoy college while I'm just trying to survive it, I swallowed. So yeah, you saved Vanessa's life. Congratulations. I hope it was worth the price. He left without another word. I flew back to Chicago on December 27th, 3 days before I had to. Told my parents I needed to work. This was becoming my default excuse. And the worst part was, it was always true. Spring semester brought new classes and old exhaustion. My roommate Sarah gently suggested I see the campus counselor about stress management. I laughed because therapy cost money I didn't have. And besides, what would I say? That my parents prioritized one daughter's addiction over the other daughter's education, and now I was angry all the time but couldn't afford to feel it because I was too busy working 3 jobs to keep myself in school. February delivered another voicemail from Dad. Vanessa relapsed again. She's in the hospital. Overdose, but she's stable. Thought you should know. I saved the message but didn't listen to it again. Didn't call back. What was there to say? I'm sorry your $47,000 didn't fix her. Hope the Arizona facility offers a loyalty program. The bitterness was starting to taste normal. March brought my 19th birthday. Mom sent a card with a $50 check inside and a note. We love you so much. Wish we could do more. I deposited the check and used it for groceries. Ashley dragged me to a party that weekend, insisting I needed to act like a college student instead of a medieval peasant. The apartment was crowded with people drinking cheap beer and playing drinking games that seemed designed for maximum noise and minimum fun. You're miserable, Ashley observed, handing me a red cup of something. I'm fine. You're the human equivalent of a clenched fist. She steered me towards a quieter corner. When are you going to deal with this? Deal with what? The rage, the hurt, all of it. You can't just work yourself to death and pretend you're okay. Watch me. I drained the cup. Whatever it was burned all the way down. But she was right, and we both knew it. April arrived with flowers and final exams. I scored well enough to maintain my GPA poorly enough to know I wasn't performing at my full potential. My journalism professor, Dr. Martinez, asked me to stay after class one day. Your work is good, she said, but it could be great. You're holding back. Why? I almost told her everything. Almost explained about the college fund and the rehab and the way I'd learned that family was just another word for people who could destroy you with good intentions. Instead, I shrugged. Just a lot on my plate. She looked at me like she could see through the lie, but was too professional to push. Whatever you're carrying, don't let it kill your passion. Journalism needs people who care enough to be angry about injustice. Channel it. Channel it. As if anger were a river I could redirect instead of an ocean I was drowning in. Summer came again, and with it another decision point. Go home or stay in Chicago. The apartment I'd been sharing with Sarah was available for summer sublet, and I'd already lined up full-time hours at the restaurant plus weekend shifts at a bookstore. Are you going home at all? Sarah asked, packing her field hockey equipment. Maybe for a week. I hadn't decided yet. The thought of sitting in my childhood bedroom pretending everything was fine while Vanessa was in her 6th rehab facility, yes 6, now felt like volunteering for emotional waterboarding. I compromised with 4 days in July, long enough to make an appearance, short enough to maintain plausible deniability about how thoroughly I disconnected from my family. The house felt different, smaller maybe, or just sadder. Mom had lost weight she couldn't afford to lose. Dad's hair had gone grayer at the temples. They moved around each other with a careful courtesy of people who had argued too much and given up on resolution. Vanessa's in a program in California now, Mom told me over coffee on my second morning home. It's more holistic. Yoga and meditation and therapy. How much, I asked. What? How much does holistic cost? Mom's face crumpled. That's not fair. None of this is fair, Mom. That's the point. I set down my mug with careful precision. Do you even see what's happening here? You and Dad have devoted your entire lives to managing Vanessa's addiction. Your marriage is dying. You look exhausted. And she's in her 6th facility starting over again, like the first 5 never happened. At what point do you admit this isn't working? She's our daughter. I'm your daughter, too. The words came out quieter than I intended. But I'm the one who's easy. I don't need rescuing or managing or thousands of dollars in crisis intervention. I just needed you to keep the promise you made when I was born. That's all. Just keep one promise. Mom reached across the table for my hand. This time I let her take it, though I didn't squeeze back. I don't know how to fix this, she whispered. You can't. I pulled my hand away gently. The money's gone. The trust is gone. I'm not asking you to fix it. I'm just asking you to understand why I can't pretend it doesn't matter. I left the next day, citing work obligations that were real enough. Sophomore year started with better financial footing. I'd earned enough over summer to build a small cushion, but the same emotional deficit. My classes were more challenging. My schedule still insane. My relationship with my family still frozen in that horrible space between love and resentment. Vanessa called in October, I'm 8 months sober, she said, and I could hear the fragile pride in her voice. That's good. I meant it, kind of. I'm in therapy. Real therapy. Not just the facility stuff. Working through things. She paused. Working through what I've done to this family. To you. Okay. That's it. Just okay. I sat down on my dorm bed, staring at the wall calendar covered in shift schedules and assignment deadlines. What do you want me to say? Vanessa, congratulations on your 8th month of sobriety. I'm genuinely happy for you, but I'm also still drowning in student loans because of your last relapse. Both things can be true. I want to make it right. Unless your holistic California program includes a time machine and $47,000, I don't see how. She was crying again. I waited it out. I got a job, she said finally. Retail, nothing fancy, but I'm saving money, and I thought I could send you something every month. Not much, but something. The offer landed in the space between us like a stone in still water. I don't want your money, I said automatically. It's not about what you want, it's about what I owe. Her voice strengthened. You didn't choose any of this, Muriel. I did. Every pill, every drink, every time I chose, getting high over getting better. Those were my choices, and you paid for them. So yeah, I'm going to send you money. Not to fix what I broke, because that's impossible, but because it's the only thing I can do that means anything. We sat in silence for a moment, phone lines humming between Illinois and California. $490 a month, she said. Starting now. That's what the math works out to, if I'm going to pay back $47,000 over 8 years. I'll send you the Venmo. Vanessa, that's almost $500. Don't argue with me on this. Please, let me try to be someone worth saving. She hung up before I could respond. True to her word, $490 appeared in my account on November 1st and December 1st and January 1st. Substantial amounts that actually made a difference in my debt load. Each payment a tangible apology. I didn't thank her. Didn't acknowledge the payments beyond reading the Venmo notifications. But I didn't send them back either. Junior year brought an unexpected development. A scholarship. The Marshall Foundation gave grants to journalism students demonstrating financial need and academic excellence, $20,000 renewable for senior year if I maintain my GPA. I cried in the financial aid office when they told me. Actual tears. The first I'd let myself shed since the day I found out about the college fund. The counselor handed me tissues and smiled like she'd seen this before. You've earned this, she said. Maybe. Or maybe I just survived long enough to get lucky. The scholarship changed everything and nothing. My debt load lightened significantly with Vanessa's monthly payments and this new funding. My schedule stayed brutal by choice now rather than necessity. The work ethic I'd built wasn't something I could just dismantle. But the space it created allowed me to breathe. I called my parents to tell them about the scholarship. Mom cried, of course. Dad's voice went thick with pride. They wanted to take me to dinner to celebrate. Wanted to drive up to Chicago and see where I was living. Maybe during spring break I said non-committal. The truth was simpler and more complicated. I'd learned to build a life without them. Not from spite, though spite had been part of it initially, but from necessity. They'd shown me I couldn't rely on them for the future they promised. So I'd stopped trying. The distance that created wasn't something a celebration dinner could bridge. Vanessa stayed sober through my junior year. 12 months became 15, became 18. Her Venmo payments arrived like clockwork, each one carrying weight beyond its dollar amount. Proof she was working, staying clean, keeping her promise. You should use it, Ashley said when I explained during one of our coffee study sessions. She was applying to law schools now, her path clear and funded. It's literally your money anyway, just taking the long way home. It's complicated. No, it's not. Your sister is trying to pay back a debt. Let her. Maybe that's part of her recovery. Making actual amends instead of just saying sorry. And $490 a month. That's real money. That's real sacrifice on her part. Maybe she was right. Senior year arrived with its particular mix of excitement and existential dread. Everyone was applying for jobs, planning futures, talking about the real world like it was a place we hadn't been living all along. My real world had started the day my parents spent my college fund. Everything since then had been survival with a diploma attached. I applied for journalism positions in Chicago, New York, Seattle places, far enough from home that accidental run-ins wouldn't happen, got interviews. Some went well, others didn't. Dr. Martinez wrote me a recommendation letter that made me sound like a better journalist than I felt. You have an eye for injustice, she'd written in the draft she'd shown me, and the tenacity to expose it. That's rare. What she didn't know was that my eye for injustice had been trained at home watching my parents choose crisis over consistency, drama over dependability. You learn to spot broken systems when you grew up inside one. Vanessa called in March of my senior year. 2 years sober, she announced. That's really good. I meant it this time fully. I'm thinking about moving back home, getting an apartment nearby. Not with mom and dad, but closer. Building things back slowly. She paused. What do you think? I think you should do whatever keeps you sober, I said honestly. But don't move home for them. Do it for yourself, if at all. What about you? Would you come home after graduation? The question hung between us like a challenge I hadn't expected. No, I said finally. I don't think so. Because of the money. Because of everything. I tried to find words that weren't weapons. I love you, Vanessa. I love mom and dad, but that house represents every broken promise. And every time I came second to your addiction, I can't heal there. Maybe you can, but I can't. She was quiet for a long moment. I understand. Do you? I'm starting to. Her voice went soft. For what it's worth, Muriel, I'm sorry. Not just for the money, though, that too, but for all of it. For being the crisis that eclipsed everything else. For being the reason you had to grow up thinking love was conditional and promises were negotiable. My throat went tight. I need to go. Okay, but Muriel, I meant what I said about the money. I'm going to keep sending it every month. It's the only way I know how to prove that I see what I took from you. We hung up and I sat in my apartment staring at nothing for 20 minutes. Graduation came in May with all the ceremony and none of the family drama I'd anticipated. Mom and dad came, which I'd expected. Vanessa came too, which I hadn't. She looked healthy, genuinely healthy. Not the fake healthy of someone white-knuckling through sobriety. Clear eyes, steady hands, a smile that reached past her teeth. Congratulations, she said, hugging me after the ceremony. I'm so proud of you. I hugged her back, surprising both of us. Thanks for coming. Wouldn't miss it. She pulled out an envelope. I wanted to give you this in person. Mom was crying again, of course. Dad had his arm around her, keeping her steady. They looked smaller, somehow, diminished by years of crisis management and difficult choices. We're so proud of you, Dad said, pulling me into a hug that felt genuine. I know we haven't always shown it the right way, but we are. I know, and I did sort of. They'd loved me in the ways they could, while most of their energy went to keeping Vanessa alive. Understanding that didn't erase the hurt, but it made the hurt make sense. We went to dinner at a nice restaurant near campus. The four of us navigating conversation with the careful politeness of people who'd hurt each other and were trying to move past it. Vanessa talked about her job, her apartment, her 2-year sobriety milestone. I talked about my job offer at a Chicago newspaper starting in June. Chicago, Mom said, trying to smile. That's exciting. It is. I didn't mention that I'd turned down an offer closer to home or that proximity to family wasn't something I was ready to navigate yet. The evening ended with more hugs and promises to visit that we all knew would be difficult to keep. My family drove back to Pennsylvania the next morning, and I stayed in Illinois, packing up 4 years of survival and calling it education. The newspaper job was entry-level reporting, exactly what I wanted. Long hours, low-pay stories that mattered. I covered city council meetings and neighborhood disputes and small injustices that added up to larger systemic failures. Dr. Martinez had been right. I had an eye for broken systems because I'd survived one. Vanessa's Venmo payments continued. $490 every month, clockwork reliable. I stopped thinking of them as charity and started accepting them as restitution. She'd broken me. She was trying to rebuild something from the pieces. Not what we'd been before. That was gone. But maybe something more honest. 2 years out of college, I got promoted to investigative reporting. Real stories, real impact. I specialized in family court and child welfare probably because my own family had taught me how complex and fucked up those systems could be. My editor praised my empathy and tenacity. She didn't know they were both born from necessity. 3 years out, Vanessa hit 5 years sober and started speaking at recovery meetings. She told me about it during one of our occasional phone calls. Her voice carried pride that felt earned this time. I tell my story, she explained, including the parts about how my addiction destroyed my family's finances and my sister's future. People need to hear the full cost, not just the personal toll. How does that go over? I asked, genuinely curious. Mixed. Some people get defensive, but others I think it helps them see the ripple effects. Addiction doesn't just hurt the addict. No, I agreed, it doesn't. 4 years out, I won a regional journalism award for a series on college debt and family financial trauma. The irony wasn't lost on me. I didn't invite my parents to the ceremony, but I sent them a copy of the article. Mom called crying. Dad sent an email that said simply, "We failed you. I'm sorry, but look what you built anyway." The check from Vanessa that month came with a note. "For what it's worth, I'm proud of who you became despite everything I put you through. Love, V." I put it on my refrigerator. That small acknowledgement that both of us had survived our family's particular disaster and were building lives on the other side of it. 5 years out, I flew home for Thanksgiving. First time since graduation. The house looked older, like it had aged in dog years during my absence. Mom and Dad looked older too, but happier somehow. Less burdened. Vanessa was there with her girlfriend, a woman named Rachel, who worked in social services and had kind eyes. We ate turkey and made small talk and avoided the heavy topics that lurked beneath every conversation. But after dinner, when we were doing dishes, Vanessa said quietly, "I've been paying you back for over 5 years now. Almost $30,000 so far." I looked at her, surprised. "Has it been that much? I keep track." She handed me a plate to dry. "I know it doesn't cover what you lost. Not the full amount, not the interest you've paid on loans, not the opportunities you missed. But I'm going to keep sending it until I hit $47,000. Another 17 to go. That's the promise I made to myself." "Vanessa," I set down the plate. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do." She met my eyes and I saw something there I hadn't seen in years. Certainty. "You lost your future paying for my recovery. The least I can do is help you build a new one." We finished the dishes in silence, but it was the comfortable kind. The kind that meant healing, maybe, or at least the beginning of it. That night, lying in my childhood bed, I thought about revenge. How I'd imagined it in those early days. Cutting my family off, completely becoming wildly successful, rubbing their faces in it, making them hurt the way they'd hurt me. The petty, vindictive fantasies that had kept me warm during those first brutal semesters. But actual revenge, I'd learned, looked nothing like that. Real revenge was surviving what should have destroyed you. It was building a career from nothing when you'd been promised something. It was maintaining your integrity when bitterness would have been easier. It was refusing to become the kind of person who'd abandon family even when family had abandoned you first. Real revenge was forcing the people who broke you to watch you heal without their help. I'd gotten into Northwestern. Graduated with honors despite working 3 jobs, won journalism awards, built a life in a city I loved, doing work that mattered. My parents had spent my college fund on my sister's addiction, and I'd succeeded anyway. Not because of their support, but despite their betrayal. That was the revenge. Proving I didn't need the foundation they'd promised because I'd learned to build my own. 6 years out, Vanessa hit 8 years sober and started a nonprofit helping families navigate the financial burden of addiction treatment. She asked me to sit on the board. I said yes because forgiveness wasn't forgetting. It was choosing to move forward anyway. At our first board meeting, she presented research on families torn apart by the cost of rehab. "Treatment shouldn't mean bankruptcy," she said, presenting slides filled with statistics I recognized from my own research. "And it definitely shouldn't mean sacrificing one child's future for another child's survival. We need to do better." After the meeting, she pulled me aside. "I've paid back $37,000 so far. 10 more to go. You really are keeping track. Every single dollar." She smiled, tired but genuine. "It's the only way I know how to prove that I've changed. Not just sober, but different. Someone who pays their debts instead of accumulating them." 7 years out, Mom called to tell me Dad had been diagnosed with early-stage Parkinson's. "We're okay," she insisted, but I could hear the fear underneath. Caught it early. Good prognosis. I flew home the next weekend. Spent 3 days helping them research treatment options, organizing medical files, setting up a system for tracking symptoms and medications. They'd aged another decade since Thanksgiving. Stress and time taking their toll. "You didn't have to come," Dad said, hands trembling slightly as he held his coffee. "I know." I squeezed his shoulder gently, but I wanted to. Because that was the thing about family. You could be angry about the past and still show up for the present. Both things could coexist. 8 years out, Vanessa made her final payment. $47,000 transferred in $490 increments over 8 years. She called me the day she sent the last one. "It's done," she said, and I could hear tears in her voice. "I know it doesn't fix what happened. I know you paid interest I can't repay and missed experiences I can't get back, but the number matches now. 47,000. I sat in my apartment, staring at my bank account, watching that last installment appear. "Thank you," I said, and meant it. Not just for the money, but for understanding why it mattered. "I love you, Muriel. I'm sorry I spent so many years being the kind of sister who only knew how to take. I love you too." The words came easier now, worn smooth by years of complicated truth. "And for what it's worth," she added, "I'm proud of who you've become." We cried together. 2 sisters separated by 600 miles and a lifetime of mistakes, finally finding our way back to something resembling peace. 9 years out, I got promoted to senior investigative reporter. The raise was substantial. the work more meaningful. I used Vanessa's $47,000 to pay off the last of my student loans, then donated the rest to her nonprofit. Full circle, strange and painful and somehow right. Mom threw me a party when I told them about the promotion. Small, just family, and a few close friends from childhood who'd stuck around. Vanessa gave a toast that made everyone cry. To my sister, who succeeded not because of us, but despite us, and who taught me that redemption isn't about forgiveness, it's about action. 10 years after the day I found out my college fund was gone, I stood in my parents' kitchen drinking coffee with Mom while she made pancakes. Same kitchen, different people inhabiting it. We need to tell you something, Mom said, flipping a pancake with practiced ease. Something I should have said 10 years ago. When we spent your college fund on Vanessa's rehab, I told myself we were making an impossible choice. Life or death, crisis or opportunity. She paused, spatula hovering over the griddle. But the truth is, we chose wrong. We chose the crisis we could see over the future we'd promised. We chose the child who demanded our attention over the child who'd earned our trust. And we broke you in ways we're still discovering. You deserve better, she continued. The fact that you succeeded anyway doesn't change that. It just means you're stronger than we ever gave you credit for. I hugged her. I forgive you, I said. Not because what you did was okay, it wasn't, but because holding on to the anchor was destroying me more than it was hurting you. Later that day, Vanessa and I sat on the back porch drinking beer and watching the sunset. Do you ever regret it, she asked, not cutting us off completely. Sometimes I admitted. But you can't heal from abandonment by becoming the abandoner. The revenge I'd gotten wasn't dramatic. It was quieter. It was survival. It was building something better. And that was everything.